Welcome to the Speculative Fiction Writing Made Simple podcast and to my twice-a-month segment, Ask Me Anything Thursdays, where I answer a writing question in 10 minutes or less. Well, probably 10 minutes or less. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, today's question is, how do I make readers love my protagonist? Okay, let's dive into this incredibly important question. Making your protagonist lovable is probably the most important part of crafting a novel that works because readers stick around to find out what happens to a protagonist they actually care about. It's just that simple. In fact, to quote one of the editing greats, Tiffany Yates Martin, in her incredible book, Intuitive Editing, readers don't care what's happening unless we care who it's happening to. That's just sort of a universal writing truth. Truth with a capital T. And it's more true for readers now than at any other time in the history of writing. Honestly, readers really want to care about the protagonist. They're not just in it for the plot these days. And personally, I can't tell you how many entirely mediocre novels I have read all the way through to the end just because I wanted to know what happened to the protagonist. Why? Because I cared about that protagonist, even though I didn't necessarily care as much about the plot. And just to clarify, making your protagonist lovable doesn't necessarily mean they have to be a good person. They can be an anti-hero or even the bad guy. It just means that we have to care what happens to them. You know the characters I'm talking about. Folks like Jaime Lannister and Cersei Lannister and Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones. Folks like Coriolanus Snow from A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. These characters do really awful, terrible things, but we still are attached to them and we still want things to turn out well for them in the end, even though we know that's probably not possible in the story. Meaning, it's not really about being lovable in the traditional sense. It's more about being inherently interesting and relatably human. So, I have 4 quick pieces of advice for any writer who wants to make sure that readers really connect to their protagonist. Ready? Number 1, make sure your protagonist is not perfect. Honestly, there is nothing more annoying than a character with 0 flaws. Why? Because readers are constantly looking for a window into another person's mind. We really don't want to see the external, glossed over image of perfection that an Instagram post or a Facebook post might give us. Instead, we want to get dirty. We want to dig down deep into another person's mind. We want to see a reflection of our own flawed humanity. We want to know that we're not alone in our own bumbling imperfections. And we want to know that someone as flawed, or maybe even more flawed, than us can be the hero and win the day. And if they don't win the day and they aren't the hero, at least we can understand them and why they made the decisions they made. Now, if you're thinking that that means you need to layer on superficial bad habits like smoking or drinking, think again. Those surface level quirks might add texture, but they certainly won't create any kind of real depth. Instead, dive into the raw, messy, and relatable truths of human nature. For example, don't just give us a character with a drinking problem. Explore the jealousy, insecurity, or shame driving that behavior. And remember, flaws don't have to be monumental to be interesting. Jealousy over trivial things like a coworker's success, or sneaking printer paper from work because your protagonist feels undervalued, can be just as revealing and compelling and interesting as anything else. It's those relatable, deeply human imperfections that make your protagonist feel authentic and keep readers rooting for them, flaws and all. If you're looking for novels that will help you explore how to make your protagonist less than perfect, but still deeply lovable, I have some suggestions for you. The first one is A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. And the second one is Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune. Number 2, Make sure to include lots of interiority and emotionality. If you're not quite sure what interiority is, it just means the interior world of the protagonist, which includes their thoughts, beliefs, and inner experiences. It's all about diving into their psyche and their reasoning and exploring the why behind their decisions, their behaviors, and their reactions. In essence, it lets us peek into their heads and understand what drives them on a deeper level. Emotionality, on the other hand, focuses on how the protagonist experiences and expresses their emotions. It's all about the what the character is feeling in response to events unfolding in the plot. Emotionality connects readers to the character's heart, while interiority connects them to the character's mind. Together, these two elements of storytelling will create a dynamic, relatable, and fully realized protagonist who readers will really connect to. In fact, these two elements, interiority and emotionality, are the two biggest things that are missing in manuscripts that agents just don't connect to. If you want to hear more about this, I highly suggest you go check out the Shit No One Tells You About Writing podcast, where agents Carly, Cece, and Bianca talk about these elements constantly. And this is something you'll see me highlighting a lot when I'm doing the snap critiques here on the podcast. Anyway, if you're looking for some books that will help you explore interiority and emotionality, I have a couple of suggestions for you. First, The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, and second, An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. Number 3, give your protagonist a troubled past that readers can emotionally relate to. I know, it's classic advice, but here's the thing, it works, and it works really well. Why? Because when you layer in plenty of interiority and emotionality, a troubled past gives readers an anchor to empathize with your protagonist. It creates moments where readers can reflect on their own emotionally similar experiences and think, wow, I get it. I can see why this character might feel or act this way. For example, I just started watching the animated series Arcane with my kids. It's intense, and one of the standout features is how well it portrays characters' troubled pasts. V and Jinx grow up as orphans in a brutal undercity, navigating survival, loss, and betrayal. You can feel their pain, anger, and the deep love they have for each other, even as that love fractures. Their pasts are integral to every choice they make and every emotional high and low they experience. The result? You don't just watch them, you feel for them. Even when they make questionable choices, you really understand why. And that's the power of a well-crafted backstory. It's not just about giving your protagonist a sob story, it's about creating an emotional resonance that draws your reader deeper into the character's world. So you dig into the protagonist's history, you find the pain points, and you show how those moments shape who they are today. Your readers will thank you for it, I promise. If you're interested in some novels that explore troubled backstory very well, I suggest The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin and Babel by R.F. Kuang. Number 4, ask for feedback from readers in your target audience. Okay, let me break this down for you real quick. When I say target audience, I'm talking about the kind of readers who are most likely to actually buy and love your novel. Picture this. You've written a fantasy novel with an LGBTQIA+ protagonist. If you hand it to your elderly grandfather and ask for his opinion on the protagonist, chances are his feedback won't reflect the thoughts of the 18 to 35-year-old female readers that this genre typically attracts. Translation? His opinion might not be all that helpful. So just asking anyone for feedback is a fast track to Frustrationville. Instead, you need input from readers who actually fit the target audience. When you find them, here are a few essential questions to ask. Are you drawn to the protagonist? Why or why not? What do you like most about the protagonist? Was there anything about the protagonist that bothered or confused you? These questions are just a jumping off point. Feel free to tailor them to your novel and any specific concerns that you have about your specific protagonist. The more focused your questions are, the better your feedback will be. Okay, that's it for today. We're done talking about making your protagonist lovable. However, there are some things that you can do to keep in touch and to continue leveling up your writing at the same time. Sounds pretty awesome, right? Okay, number 1, sign up for my email list. Not only do I give valuable writing advice every week, but I also do several free writing workshops each year for the rad group of writers on my list. You'll find the link to sign up to be on my email list right in the show notes, so go do that right now. Number 2, if you have a burning writing question for Ask Me Anything Thursdays, you'll find the link to text me right in the show notes. If you'd like to include your name, I'll give you a shout out on the show. But if not, that's okay too. So go send me your question ASAP. Number 3, if you'd like a free snap critique of your first scene, 5 pages or fewer, you'll find that form right in the show notes too. And you might want to head over there and fill out that form ASAP because this service is filling up fast. Number 4, if you're curious about private book coaching or group book coaching, please go ahead and sign up for a program Clarity Chat. This is a totally free conversation with no pressure. We just talk about your book and we explore whether book coaching is right for you and your project. Number 5, last but not least, if you find this podcast helpful and useful and you'd like to hear more, please share it with a writer friend, or 2, or 3, or 4. I would really appreciate it. Until next time, keep writing, keep dreaming, and remember, the world needs your stories right now. So don't you dare give up on your novel or yourself. Talk soon.